I'm Lucy. I am the lead vocalist in a band called Dick Move. And I am green as. I've only been kicking about in the industry for a hot minute. And I am an APRA member. Yep, I am. So I know kind of what APRA does for me and for artists, but I am definitely wanting to know more. What I want to know is why it's important for musicians and artists at all levels to sign up with APRA.
One of the big things that APRA AMCOS does, or what it hopefully represents, as well as collecting royalties for songwriters, we kind of advocate on their behalf and also on the behalf of its value, like musical work's value. So one thing we always try to kind of say to new members, particularly younger members that kind of have no idea, they're just like writing songs for the fun of it, is that what they're creating has value. And, you know, they are the owner of that piece of work. And then when that work is used in a multitude of contexts, they're entitled to get something back for it. So it doesn't matter if you're selling out Western Springs or if you're playing on the stage behind us. Every time you're playing that music, your own music and your own songs, you're entitled to those royalties. It's funny you kind of talk about the way that you signed up. I remember when I first became a member in Melbourne, when I was playing in a band, my brother just said, after I'd already, you know, after we'd done gigs, he was like, you know, you can get paid to do those gigs. I was like, really? What?
Yeah.
Surely not. And then I signed up. And it's so common for really like, for that to be the beginning for people.
Yeah.
So really, as soon as you start performing and your music's out there in the world, you should become an APRA member. It doesn't matter whether you feel like it's going to be a hit and you're going to be famous. What it enables you to do is ensure that when that music is used, then, you know, royalties are collected on your behalf. Particularly when it comes to live performances.
Yeah, because that's one thing that I found really interesting, is that I always thought that it was like only your big shows that you would be collecting any royalties from. But there's someone in my band, not me obviously, I do the interviews. There's someone in my band who submits set lists every now and that's for shows like at Whammy and just anywhere.
Performance reports are really, really important for a large majority of our membership because a lot of them won't be top tier. They won't be getting commercial radio play. They won't be playing big festivals. They won't be, you know, having millions of streams on Spotify, but they'll be playing a shitload of gigs and they'll be gigging their asses off. So the money that they get from the performance reports is actually really, really helpful and really useful and helps sustain what they do. So yeah, every time you play your own music live at a live music venue like Whammy or at an open mic night or anything like that, you're entitled to royalties. The way that we pay those royalties is from our members submitting performance reports. And yeah, in your context, if you're a member of a band and everyone in the band is a songwriter, only one songwriter needs to submit those performance reports in order for everyone to get paid. In New Zealand in particular, large festivals like Laneway, Rhythm and Vines, Splore, or bigger kind of headline shows where the ticket price is over $35, that's when you submit your set list to like a festival promoter or event promoter and you get paid based on the ticket sales.
Right.
Whereas the money from performance reports comes from license fees that like Whammy Bar and live music venues pay every year.
Yeah.
And that goes into a big pool and then we distribute that pool of money based on the performance reports that we receive. Yeah, so like Whammy Bar, Wine Cellar, they all have what's called a per day rate for live music. So they've got a license for background music and then they've got also a live music tariff each day, which I think, you know, is not crazy expensive. It's maybe a pint or two. And yeah, that per day rate essentially fills in the performance report pool and then we pay out of that.
Where does the money come from?
The money comes from...
The sky.
Yeah, it's magic. Essentially, the way the money comes in is So APRA, as a music rights organisation, represents essentially what we call the rights holders in a musical work, and you two are perfect examples of rights holders in a musical work. You as a songwriter, and then Pennie as a representative of a music publisher. So APRA is made up of songwriter members and publisher members, and because they own that copyright, if anyone wants to use that music or use those songs, they need to get permission. So under the Copyright Act, as a creator, music creator, you kind of have an exclusive right on how your music or how what you create is used. Instead of Whammy and wine cellar and local cafes and airlines, radio stations, TV stations having to go to each individual songwriter of your band and of every other song to use, they come to APRA, AMCOS to take out a license, because we essentially offer kind of a one-stop shop for them. So they can come to us, take out a license, and know that they can use an entire repertoire of music around the world. So basically the money comes from license fees that are paid by music users. And yeah, music users are live music venues, cafes, hairdressers, airlines, basically any organisation that uses music, councils, TV stations, radio, Spotify, Apple Music, anyone, because they need to get your permission. And when you sign up to APRA, you essentially say to APRA, I want you as a third-party organisation to administer rights on my behalf and collect these royalties. And that's the same as a publisher member as well. Like Native Tongue, when they join up as a publisher member, they say, we own the copyrights in these catalogues, and we join APRA to collect royalties on our behalf, and then we distribute it to our writers and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, the money all comes from licensing activity, I suppose. The size of the pool and the size of the money can depend on a whole bunch of different things. For live music venues, it's based on like how many days of live music they host and how big the floor space is and stuff like that. Same goes for kind of cafes. For TV stations and radio stations, it's usually tied to kind of advertising revenue. For digital service providers like Spotify and Apple Music, it's tied to how many paid subscribers they've got versus how many ad-funded users they've got, and that changes every quarter. So APRA is constantly bringing in money from a whole range of different sources and kind of pulling them up depending on where they've come from, because there are kind of different ways that we distribute that money. But it's this, that's how we kind of pay publishers, and that's how we pay songwriters. One thing I was going to ask you, Lucy, was how that Dick Move have discussed like songwriting and splits and stuff like that. Like, did you have a conversation? I mean, you mentioned that the rest of the band have kind of been in the industry or played in bands for a while. Was there a conversation up front? It was like... Yeah,
it's been completely up front the whole time. It was kind of like, because the way that it works is incredibly collaborative. Because like I said, like I've never been in a band before. I came in just like, happy to be here, woo! So like what happens is the way that we write is that I generally come up with some lyrics and present them to the group. And then someone will put like fang a melody to it, and then everyone comes up with their own parts pretty much. So it really, and then we just sit here and work it out together. And so there was never it was always going to be that it was split evenly. And that's, I kind of thought that that's what happened with all bands. I was like, oh, they must just always split it evenly. But I'm sure, like, if I was writing the music as well, then I'm sure that would be, like, full bands where someone writes, the entire song. It would be different. I was like, oh, this is so much easier. Why don't everyone just split it evenly?
It's an interesting one, because I mean, it's something that we deal with at APRA obviously every day. And people get in touch with us saying like, how should I split this? How should I split that? I've gone to work with this producer. I wrote the song, but the producer's done this. So there's always like
always a real like contention between band members.
It can be super contentious.
And it's good that you've sorted it out straight away. Sometimes people will, like, months later, they'll release the song and then haven't sorted that split out and haven't registered it yet. And then it might start getting quite popular and they think, oh, right, I've got to, And then what does happen sometimes is if that song hasn't been registered, or it's been registered and there's a dispute on that split, it can limit it for the uses that it's used for. So you can't license a song for an ad if it's got a dispute on it because somebody isn't happy with those splits. So it can stop revenue coming in for you.
Wow.
You know?
So it can have like a black mark, like they haven't sorted it out yet.
Yeah,
so
pretty much. Yeah,
so
and
like
then
when
it's,
you,
right.
Yeah, then you've got to negotiate with the different like copyright owners to work out who owns what and to resolve those splits.
Yeah. So like if you got in touch with us and said, and emailed me and was like, hey, this particular Dick Move song, like I want to change the splits. I want to give myself 50% as the lyricist, and then the rest of the 50% of the song can go to the rest of the band. In order for that to happen...
That would be a dick move.
That would be a dick move. In order for that to happen, the rest of the band would have to agree.
Yeah, right.
And if they didn't, and you persisted, then what we would do as an organisation is to place that song into dispute, which essentially just means it gets put on hold.
Wow.
So royalties still gets collected, revenue still gets collected, but we just hold it until all of you either agree or... I mean, we've had songs in our system in dispute for decades.
Really?
Yeah, because,
Whoa.
if you think about...
Because then the band will just, I guess, a lot of times bands will just break up and they go like, well...
Yeah. I mean, that happens a lot. Sometimes people get in touch with us like 20 years later and they're like, oh, I want to use this song. And it's like, well, if you've got a bad relationship with the person that you wrote that song with, it's going to be difficult if you want to change things. Wow. And, anyone that uses samples in their music, if they haven't, which is obviously really, really common, if they haven't cleared samples, which happens every day, and a major publisher represents, or not a major publisher, a publisher represents, the copyright in one of those samples, then they can get in touch with us and say, this song is using our copyright or what we represent without approval.
So is this what you have to deal with all the time?
It comes in pretty frequently. Yeah, I guess not me personally, but we do have a team of representatives that deal with kind of the repertoire and like our publishers as well.
Yeah.
So we'll deal with our publisher members like Native Tongue and then the majors and all the independent ones. And then we go to them, as Pennie mentioned before, like they have agreements with sub-publishers in different territories. So we will go to the different publishers within Australia and New Zealand sometimes to reach out to a sub-publisher in the US or the UK if someone's got a problem with a split there.
Like
and it's super common.
Yeah, a good example would be the Verve Bittersweet Symphony.
Yeah, right.
So they used, they were accused of using a Rolling Stones song, and the Rolling Stones manager at the time, he just said, well, we're going to, because the Verve went to register that song, and of course that song's probably the most famous song, and it was put in dispute, and the resolution of that dispute was that 100% of that written song went to the Rolling Stones revenue.
Whoa.
So, and that was only overturned or given back to them recently when the manager, I think, passed away, and the Rolling Stones heard about what had happened and said, no, we'll give them back the publishing rights. But those publishing rights for all those years, all the royalties from the publishing, not the master recording, but the publishing, went to the Rolling Stones.
Whoa.
So that's why it's really important to
clear
your sample and to arrange your splits, makes it a lot easier.
Money aside, I wanted to ask about what other benefits are there being a member of APRA for artists that's not to do with money. Are there any?
But not to do with getting paid.
Yeah.
Silver Scrolls.
I was going to say, like, being nominated for awards and things, right?
Yeah. So we've got, we have Song Awards and we also have the Silver Scroll Awards, which is which is member voted and kind of a top 20 is kind of selected by a big judging panel that we've put together of different musicians and artists and people in the industry each year. And then the membership then vote on that top 20 to give us a top 5. And then the Silver Scroll is announced. It's, essentially the APRA Best Song of the Year as voted by the membership. So there's also awards for Best Kids Song, also Best Jazz, and I want to say Best Country Song at their respective award ceremonies. Another thing is like I spoke really early about advocacy. So when it comes to lobbying government, that's something that we kind of pride ourselves on playing a pretty significant role in. So that includes, you know, when stuff like copyright reviews come up and they talk about copyright, we are lobbying the government to, you know, have, we would say, strict copyright laws, because that ensures that our members' rights are protected and that they can make money from it and stuff like that. We have member events that kind of happen around the country and also in Auckland, which is a good opportunity for our members to meet each other and connect. Like if there are new APRA members and they're kind of trying to get a feel for the scene a little bit or for who's involved and talk to other songwriters, those are really good opportunities. We also have what's called Song Hubs. Song Hubs is a songwriting camp that we put on, that we've just started to do regionally. That's where we invite, we'll appoint a curator in a regional centre, and usually a kind of prominent or somewhat iconic, I suppose, New Zealand songwriter, depending on who you talk to. And they then will bring along 4 other songwriter guests, and then we ask our membership to apply.
So it's like, you don't have to be like an established artist. You can just be like anyone that's signed up for APRA.
Anyone can apply. There are some eligibility things around, you know, we want to see that there's been some involvement in establishing yourself.
You're not just looking to be like discovered.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, you know, someone that plays at the local pub once a year, probably not going to get it. Yeah. But like, not someone that is made, you know, music their absolute career, but is certainly thinking about it. And yeah, we put them in one place for a week, and they get put in groups of kind of 4 or 5, and they write a song together each day and come up with a demo. And really the idea behind it is to kind of encourage collaboration and encourage networking and developing relationships with kind of fellow musicians, and, you know, if there are higher profile songwriters, then hopefully some mentors as well, because I think that's really, really important, and Song Hubs has kind of proven that that has happened, and it's kind of worked and been, I think, good for the industry really at large, and has encouraged a fair bit of collaboration and people working together. And yeah, I say that's kind of, in a nutshell, that's really what you get out of it. You know, it's not just royalty collection. You know, you can always call on us as a member services department about kind of information about anything.
Yeah, and like to get support with things like contracts and like...
Yeah, I mean, you can totally send through stuff and we can look it over. I mean, we can never provide legal advice, but if it's just general information, we're always there and on hand, and can guide you in the right direction if there's someone better suited to do it. Like Pennie said, you know, we're music lovers first and foremost, and we don't have jobs and don't exist without the membership. Yeah. So what we want to do day in, day out is help them as much as possible. You know, the more that we can do to help with admin or taking things off their plate so that they can focus on creating and songwriting or going out and touring, like, you know, that's really what we want to do.